Well, welcome back everyone. This is the Advanced Squad Leader Training video series. This is your host, once again, ID Jester. This video series, we focus in on one specific aspect within the Advanced Squad Leader rulebook, and we try to dissect that rule and explain all the various components of that rule so that people have a better understanding of how and why that rule applies to different units. As you can see, today we're going to be talking about heat of battle. Heat of battle. It is section A of the rulebook, subsection 15.1. Although it's just a few sub-chapters inside of section A of the rulebook, there's quite a bit of information, so I wanted to cover it. It's also very important and relates back to the previous video which I did on ASL. So these two almost work in conjunction. While ASL is going to focus on making your units worse quality, Heat of Battle has basically has the opportunity to do the opposite, and we're going to go through what it actually does. Section 15.1, Heat of Battle. The Cauldron of Battle, which destroys so many units that failed the test of arms, could also forge better soldiers, or acts of desperation born of heroism or despair. This process is reflected by the Heat of Battle die roll, which follows any original morale check or rally, not self-rally, die roll of 2. So when you do a morale check or rally check that's not a self-rally and you roll a 2, you're going to then subsequently roll on the generating a battle heat of battle result. Notice, of course, in ASL there are exceptions and rules that we need to apply. Unarmed units, Cavalier, PRC, heroes, crews, participants in a human wave attack, already Berserk units, climbing, swimming, wading units, and units in boats or parachute counters are not subject to heat of battle. So you can see there's quite a lengthy list there, so just don't assume that everybody that you roll a die roll of 2 on a morale check or a non-self-rally check will get a heat of battle results. The Heat of Battle die roll is subject to some die roll modifiers, and one of the important die roll modifiers is the +1 die roll modifier for a broken unit applies even if that unit rallies because of the dice roll of a 2. So another interesting part of the Heat of Battle is if your final die roll is a 5 or a 6, you're going to result in both a hero generation and battle hardening. So not only are you going to get a hero out of it, but you're going to get battle hardening as well. If you look at our chart here, here's the Heat of Battle dice roll chart. You're going to simply roll 2d6, 2 6-sided dice. You can apply your Heat of Battle die roll modifiers, which are located down here. And of course they are accumulative, so if you have a broken unit that is also Russian, you would get +1 for it to be being broken and +2 for it being Russian, so you would add 3 to your dice roll. After all your modifiers, you can see that if you roll 6 or less, you've created a hero. If you roll 5 through 8, you have battle hardened. 9 through 11, you've made your units turn Berserk. And on the 12, they're surrender. We're going to cover each one of these different aspects within the Heat of Battle die roll. First of all, we're going to talk about heroes. Heroes is section 15.2. A hero is represented by a single man counter with a strength factor of 1-4-9. If it fails a morale check, a hero is considered wounded. Wounded, so they're not going to break, they're going to be wounded instead. And the counter is flipped it over to their wounded sign where it's going to display a strength factor of 138 and undergo a wound severity die roll, which is section 17.11. If a wounded hero fails a morale check, it is eliminated. Basically, it'll be wounded again, so it's going to be eliminated. The hero never breaks, nor goes berserk, and is not subject to cowering or enforced pin results. Of course, there's a bunch of exceptions: minimum move, wounds, PF checks, and collapse HUD. A hero's printed morale level is never lower by any cause, but could increase to 10 or 9 if wounded by various causes. Look at section A.18 of the rulebook. Creation. Simply put, a hero is randomly created from other personnel types, even if they were broken, during the course of play by a final heat of battle die roll less than or equal to 6. A leader which becomes heroic automatically rallies, and also retains his leadership modifier and all of his leadership capabilities, as well as, also note, as well as any higher morale rating. So if a 10 -2 or 10 -3 leader would be considered a 1-4-10 hero, and 1-3-9 if it's wounded. A leader that becomes heroic is marked with the generic hero counter 149X as a reminder that it retains both its leadership and or commissaire benefits and also its heroic qualities. So it's going to retain both its leadership and commissaire benefits and also gain its heroic qualities. Heroic leader may not combine his heroic die roll modifier with his leadership die roll modifier. Cannot combine them. It's one or the other. However, should a heroic leader be eliminated, this can still cause an LLMC, leader loss morale check. A multi-man counter, which creates a hero, is unaffected in any other way other than the possibility of also gaining battle hardening if we fall within the correct range for battle hardening. So multi-man counter that creates a hero, unaffected unless it also falls in the range to do battle hardening. You can see on our chart here, battle hardening is 5 through 8, hero creation is 6 or less. So under 5 or 6, you're going to get both your hero and battle hardening. A hero does share the multi-man counter's fire and movement status at the time of creation. So if they were marked with prep fire or TI counter or whatever, the hero also gets that same status as the multi-man counter. A hero has some special abilities when we're talking about what weapons it can use and how it can use its weapons. If we look at section 15.23 weapon use, a hero may fire and carry a support weapon as if they were a leader, but applies a -1 die roll to its 2-hit or IFT die roll. In addition, a hero uses a support weapon normally requiring 2 men to fire by adding +1 to its die roll, but this is going to be offset by its heroic die roll modifier. So if you have a hero, he can fire a support weapon that normally takes 2 men to fire it. It can do it, it adds 1 for firing it by itself, but he gets a -1 for his heroic die roll modifier, which negates it, so there's no bonus or penalty. A hero forfeits its own inherent firepower any phase it uses its support weapon. A hero may fire a gun at less than or equal to 82 millimeters that normally requires a crew, but it does this as if it was captured and being fired by an enemy crew, which is section 2111 and 2112. But his heroic die roll modifier does apply. If firing a gun greater than 82 millimeters, It might fire it only once per game turn and only during the movement phase or defensive fire phase. The hero cannot change the covering art of a NT weapon. A hero is the only unit which may fire an AFE AAMG while as a rider. 15.24 Heroic Die Roll Modifier. A hero and any fire group, even if just another single-man counter he is part of, providing the hero is firing at normal range of either its inherent firepower or its weapon, may deduct 1 from its IFT CC resolution die roll. This die roll modifier is cumulative with any application of another leader die roll modifier or additional heroes present in the same attack. So this is cumulative. If you have 3 heroes in close combat with one another, they do get all their bonuses on that attack. Unlike a hero's IFT die roll modifier is not contingent on being in the same location with all the members of the fire group or in combination with another unit. A hero is always considered stealthy and may use his die roll modifier for clearance attempts. A hero participating does not exempt other members of the fire group from cowering. So just because a hero is there doesn't exempt other people from cowering. Heroic die roll modifier is NA, no die roll modifier for flamethrower or DC attacks. So that's quite a lot there, just talking about a hero. A few 4 or 5 subsections in 15.2. But I think once you read them over once or twice, you get the general gist. You might have to refresh your memory. They're not too complicated. Just try to remember some of the important things that I'd underline there. And you'll be fine. The next thing we're going to talk about is battle hardening. Battle hardening is basically the opposite of what I talked about in my previous video with the ELR effects, where units become less quality. Battle hardening is going to do the opposite, and it's going to make you have better. You're going to upgrade your units. So 15.3 battle hardening. An armed personnel unit can also benefit from a form of unit substitution whenever it rolls 5 through 8 final heat of battle die roll. This battle hardening effects improves the unit class, even if it's broken, by exchanging it for an unbroken, unpinned unit of the same size, but the next higher quality. So same size, again, squad, full squad goes to a full squad, a half squad goes to a half squad. It's the same size, next higher quality. So first line units go to elite, second line units go to first line, and conscript and green units would move up to second line units. So you're going to move up, but you're going to stay the same size. And of course there's rules when we're talking about how to substitute. When substituting unit for the next higher quality, none of the numbers of its strength factor can decrease. None of them can decrease. And if given a choice between two different types of the next higher class, must use the one which gains the least amount. So as an example, a German 247 half squad may be exchanged for a 248 half squad, not a 348. Battle hardening can be refused. Battle hardening can be refused. If you don't want to battle harden for whatever reason, you can refuse it. A leader which becomes battle hardened is exchanged for the next higher grade leader. So 6-1 becomes a 7-0, 8-0 becomes 8-1, etc., etc. An already elite multi-man counter, which or possible leader, which is battle hardened, becomes fanatic. So once you get up to the best quality, the best elite units, the best quality leaders, and they become battle hardened again, there's nowhere to go up, so instead they become fanatic. That's rule 10.8, and is marked with a fanatic counter. It remains fanatic for the remainder of the game, even if subsequently replaced or reduced. So once you become fanatic, you're just so fanatic for the rest of the game. No matter what happens to you, you will stay fanatic. So if we go into our vassal controls here, we'll just look at a few things here as example. We have some Russian squads here, a few German squads here, obviously. If we had a 7-0 leader, single man counter, that was battle hardened, it would go up to an 8-0 leader. So the 7-0 would be taken off and the 8-0 would be replaced instead. Same thing if it was an 8-1 leader, it would be replaced by 9-1 leader. So simply replacing with a better quality unit. If we look at our unit here in J4, is a first line unit, so it's going to move up from a first line into elite. If you look at the Russian, they have 2 elite units, one with a box, one without. One's a 4-5-8, one's a 6-2-8. Which one of these units could the first line be battle hardened into? And the answer is, question, give you a second to think about it. Question is, which one is it? It's going to be the 4-5-8. It'll be upgraded into a 4-5-8. The reason being because none of the numbers can go down. You see 4 goes up to 6. 4 goes down to 2. We can't have any numbers that go down, so this one could not be upgraded into this one. So the 4-4-7 would be replaced by the 4-5-8. If we look at our half squad over here, 2-2-6, we have conscript. Conscript's going to get upgraded. I don't have this set up right, so disregard that for now. Let's look at the first line German unit here. First line German unit. There are 3 elite units for the German half squads. There's a box, a circle, and a regular elite. Which one of these would the first line unit half squad be upgraded to? Which one of these would it be upgraded to? Give you a second to think about that as well. Well, we can tell here the 2-4-7. Well, we know we can't do this one because this number here goes down. So we know it can't be that one. So that kind of narrows it down. We have a 3-3-8 and we have a 2-4-8. Which one would we go up to? We would go up to this one actually. The reason being, we're only going to go up in one class here, 2-4-7 to 2-4-8. If we were to look at this unit, we would go up in 2 different categories. We go up in firepower and in range. So, or I'm sorry, in morale. So that's not a possibility. So it must be this one, 2-4-7. All the numbers, none of the numbers go down, and at least one of them goes up. So we'll upgrade into the 2-4-8. When we talk about our heroes, the 149 heroes, if they are hit or fail a morale check, instead of becoming broken, we're going to, let's see if we can do this, wound them, there we go. And they get a 1-3-8. They go down to 3 movement factors, and you would have to do a wound severity die roll to find out if the wound kills him or not. So that's how battle hardening works. You're just going to upgrade to the next best kind of unit, and then make sure that you follow the rules. None of the numbers can go down, and if you have a choice, you choose the one where the least amount of numbers go up. So if you have a choice between gaining a bonus in 2 categories or gaining a bonus in just 1 category, you would choose the one where you would only gain a bonus in one. Very simple. Exact opposite of the ELR process. Battle hardening can make your units better quality, give them better firepower, or better morale, or better range. Alright, so section 15.4, we're going to start talking about Berserk. So this is also a heat of battle thing, and can cause some different aspects within the rules that are a little unique for Berserk units. So look at section 15.4. Berserk units are created from infantry when they roll at 9 through 11. Of course, again, there's some exceptions here. Mark units with the Berserk counter when they go Berserk. A broken unit which goes Berserk is automatically rallied. So automatically rally, and if goes Berserk as well. Leader consequences. If your leaders go Berserk, then everybody wants to go Berserk. So 15.41 leader consequences. When a leader goes Berserk, he must, after resolving any other fire attack at the target location, attempt to change any other units in the same location to go Berserk as well. So if the leader goes Berserk, first thing he wants to do after resolve the rest of the attack that's happening in that location, they're going to try to attempt, the leader's going to try to attempt to make the other units in the same location go Berserk as well. Each such unit must make a normal task check subject to the Berserk leader's modification. If they pass the task check, they become Berserk as well. So the leader is going to use his modifier to sway them into becoming Berserk as well. And if they pass their normal task check, they will also become Berserk. If they fail their check, then there's no change to the other units. After the Berserk task check, once that is completed on all the units in the same location as the leader will forfeit his leadership die roll modifier until he returns back to normal. So once the Berserk task check has been completed, once the leader's applied his leadership bonus to those checks, then he's going to forfeit it until he returns to normal. What is normal? Well, let's see here. 15.42 morale. Berserk units assume a base morale level of 10. So when you go Berserk, morale level of 10. If a Berserk unit fails a morale check, it is not broken, but suffers casualty reduction. So you got a morale level of 10. If you fail that morale check, doesn't matter, you're not broken, you will suffer casualty reductions instead. You do not need to make a PATC check, PAATC, which is that AFV attack assault task check to enter into an AFV location. You do not need to make a LLMC or LLTC. It never breaks, it never cowers, it never becomes pinned, except due to PF or ATMM checks, minimum move, or collapsed huts. Berserk unit never has its morale level lowered by any cause and automatically loses any CX or TI concealment and pin status. However, Berserk unit never receives the leadership benefit of a friendly leader, even if it derives good order units from such benefits. Alright, so once we have our Berserk units, our leader is going to try to have other units become Berserk. If it's a multi-man counter, it goes Berserk. What happens to them? Well, what happens to them, the first thing that's going to happen is section 15.43, charge. At the start of the movement phase, each non-melee Berserk unit must charge the nearest, in hexes, not movement factors, known enemy unit in line of sight. and must, if it has sufficient movement factors, enter its location. So it's going to charge at the nearest known enemy unit in line of sight, use as many of its movement factors as he can, and if he has enough, he's going to enter the location of this known enemy. During that movement phase, in an attempt to destroy that enemy unit in close combat. If there are several that are equal distance away, the attacker can choose which of these hexes he will charge. If multiple Berserk units of the same side occupy the same location, they must move together as one combined stack, unless they require different movement factors to exit the location. So for example, you have units that are inside and outside a foxhole in the same location, and one is wounded and the other is not, etc. If they're in the same location and they have the same movement factors and the same movement factors to move towards an enemy unit, they'll move as one stack together. One big Berserk stack. Alright, 15.431, all Berserk units have 8 movement factors. So they're going to gain 8 movement factors, a total which can never be increased except for road bonuses or if you're a downhill skier. A unit which becomes Berserk while still moving, not pinned or wounded, must use the remainder of its movement factors to charge. So if you've already spent, say, 3 movement factors, an enemy fired on you, made you do a morale check, you rolled a 2 and got a Berserk outcome from that. If you already spent 2 movement points, you would have 6 movement points left. You must spend the remainder of these movement points charging the enemy unit. Let's see here. The unit's movement factor allowance for the rest of the movement phase is 8 minus whatever movement factor is already expended. At the start of the movement phase before charging, a Berserk unit must abandon any support weapon which individually costs more than 1 PP, or which in combination with other 1 portage point support weapons is in a excess of 1 portage point. But he may use them in the defensive fire phase or advanced fire phase prior to that. He must still carry those that he can retain. DCs can only be thrown. They cannot be placed or set. A Berserk unit never qualifies for assault movement, even if it has to charge an adjacent location. So even if you have to charge an adjacent location, you still don't get your assault movement bonus. But you may dash across the road. You can dash across the road. The charging unit must take the shortest route in movement factors to the enemy unit, including the use of bypass. You can't wire as 1 movement factor. If in the act of charging the nearest known enemy unit in line of sight, the Berserk unit all of a sudden sees somebody else that's closer, they will charge that unit instead. So line of sight of the closest known enemy unit, and during that process, if he sees another unit that becomes available that's closer than the one he is charging, then he will switch and charge that unit as well. If it moves in a concealed enemy's location and reveals that unit while charging a different unit, the Berserk unit must remain in that hex and attempt to eliminate all enemy units therein instead. Should the only known enemy unit no longer be in the line of sight in the interim, the Berserk unit still charges towards that hex originally occupied by that unit. If it still sees no known enemy unit, its end its move after entering that location, and the Berserk status is removed at the end of the current phase. Otherwise, it will continue to charge at the now nearest known enemy unit. So basically, if he's charging somebody, the nearest known enemy unit, he can't quite make it there, that enemy disappears, runs behind some terrain or something that blocks line of sight. During the next movement phase, he will continue charging at that location where he saw that enemy. When he enters that location, he will then look around. If he doesn't see anybody, nobody's in line of sight, then he loses his Berserk status. If he sees another enemy unit, he will then charge that one. So that's how that works. 15.432, a Berserk unit must enter a known enemy location during the movement phase if it has sufficient movement points. And we actually mean move into the enemy location, not adjacent, stop adjacent, and then advance in. It must move into the location during the movement phase if it has sufficient movement points, or I'm sorry, movement factors. Defending infantry unit to attack them with final protective fire. So if they're moving in, defending unit, infantry can try to attack them with final protective fire. If the only known enemy unit is a lone SMC, single man counter, a Berserk multi-man counter will immediately conduct an infantry overrun. Section 4.15. But, of course, there are some rules with that. It doesn't need to do the normal task check, nor increase the movement factors normally required with that infantry overrun. The Berserk unit may also attack with triple point-blank fire during the advanced fire phase. Once he's moved into that location, he can do the triple point-blank fire against that same hex, same location enemy unit, but of course it's halved because it takes place in the advanced fire phase. Survivors of that attack are not yet held in melee, and the stack is placed with a CC counter. Because the Berserk unit must charge in its movement phase, it may never fire during the prep fire phase. So the only option it has is charge in the movement phase with its 8 movement factors. Charge the nearest enemy in line of sight. If another enemy becomes in line of sight during his move that's closer, he will then switch to that enemy instead. If he can't make it into that hex, his next movement phase, he will continue moving towards that closest known enemy. So again, no prep fire. If you make it into the location during the movement phase, then you can triple point-blank fire during the advanced fire phase against that enemy, assuming that you survive all of his defensive fire and final protective fire attacks. Because the Berserk unit must charge this movement phase, it can never prep fire, even if adjacent to the location it must charge. So even if you're adjacent, you can't prep fire, you're still going to charge in there into that adjacent hex. When you're charging in that adjacent hex during your movement phase, remember, you still take the penalty for non-assault move because you are not assault moving. However, it may fire during the advanced fire phase or the defensive fire phase, reacting to opponent's movement. Berserk unit does not take prisoners, and a Berserk unit is always lax in CC. So that's an outline of, I guess we can, 15.44, if there's no enemies in line of sight, if a unit suffers a Berserk results, but no enemy units are in line of sight that it happens, the result is rather changed to battle hardening. So if you become Berserk, no enemies in line of sight, which is pretty rare that this will happen because normally somebody's going to be doing an attack on you, but it can happen if you're running across mines, then there's no enemy units in line of sight, or off-board artillery, or something that could possibly not have an enemy in sight. If there are no enemy units in line of sight, simply change it to battle hardening instead. Of course, when you're charging, you're not going to run through unbridgeated water, obstacles, a cliff, or a blaze. You will charge the nearest known enemy unit instead, unless an alternate route to the nearest known enemy unit is still closer than the next nearest known enemy. So again, even though it's the nearest known enemy, you're not going to run through 3 hexes of blazes to get to them. So just check out these rules on some restrictions. There's no other known enemy unit that you can get to that's closer, and you have to take a very dangerous course over cliffs or blazes. Then 15.44 applies, so instead of becoming Berserk, you will be battle hardened. However, there are, of course, exceptions to that as well. A Berserk unit will move into a minefield and FFE or wire during a charge. So, pretty much everything I say, you can just expect that there's probably 20 other exceptions throughout the rulebook that apply or don't apply to the certain things. Return to normal. A Berserk unit will lose its Berserk status and return to good order whenever it does what? Well, whenever it eliminates all known enemy units in the location it just entered with either triple point blank fire or close combat. So triple point blank fire, which will be halved, or FT during the advanced phase, or close combat. Or if at the end of its charge there are no known enemy units in its line of sight. So what are the 2 things that are going to happen? It's either going to run into that hex where it sees the enemy units. If they're still there, then they're going to fight to the death. If he gets to that hex where he saw those enemy units and there's nobody there, and he looks around and doesn't see anybody, then of course he'll lose his Berserk status as well. So some specific rules that apply just to Berserk units. You can see some of the things we talked about. And last but not least, we'll talk about 15.5, which is surrender. This, of course, is the highest dice rule and one of the worst. A final heat of battle die roll of greater than or equal to 12 causes the affected unit to become broken if it's not already broken and disrupted, and to surrender immediately to any adjacent known good order enemy unit as if it shared the same location. If no such enemy unit is adjacent, the unit is only disrupted instead. And of course, there's 3 lines of exceptions there. If there's no quarter in effect, Japanese, partisans, fanatics, commissaires, blah blah blah. So please do read the rules over. Make sure once you watch the video, you read the rules over carefully. We're talking about section 15 of section A of the rule book, Heat of Battle. It's basically an outline whenever you're going to roll a original morale check or a rally check that is not a self rally. When you roll a die roll of 2, you're going to have something probably, hopefully good happen to your units. Good things can be hero creation, battle hardening, and you can even get a combination of both of those. If you end up on a 5 or a 6, you can see here there are modifiers to this as well. If your unit's elite or British or Finnish, you're going to -1, +1 for broken or inexperienced units. And of course, these are accumulative as well. +1 for French or partisans, +2 for Russian or Allied minor, +3 for Axis minor or Italian, and +4 for Japanese. So lots of different outcomes that can happen here based on what you roll when you once you've rolled your battle hardening. You're going to roll on the chart. Hopefully you can get something good to help your units become that much better. Heroes, great help. Remember, they keep their leadership abilities as well as their heroic abilities. They're never going to break again or go berserk, and they're not subject to cowering or enforcing pin results unless it's one of the exceptions there. So heroes, not going to break, they're not going to go berserk, they're not going to cower. They can use weapons. They can even get on top of that AFV and use that AA machine gun. So jump on that tank and start using that machine gun with your hero. You got your battle hardening, which is basically going to increase to the next higher quality but the same size. Rules for that, of course, are none of the numbers strength factors can decrease, and if given a choice between two different units of the next higher class, must use the one which gains the least number of bonuses. Battle hardening can be refused, and of course when a leader becomes battle hardened, it is exchanged for the next higher level. Berserk units, leader that goes berserk is going to try to have everyone in his location become berserk as well. When he does this, he's going to apply his modifier to their normal task check. If any unit passes their task check, they become berserk as well. After the berserk task check, the leader is going to forfeit all of his leadership die roll modifiers until he returns back to normal. The basic outline for morale is always 10. If you fail a morale check, it's not broken, but rather suffers casualty reduction. It doesn't have to make a patsy check or a leader loss morale check or a leader loss task check. It never breaks, cowers, or becomes pinned except due to some of these rather unique situations. The basic premise behind it is once they charge, once they start their movement phase, they're going to charge. They're going to charge the nearest known enemy unit in line of sight. They're going to have 8 movement factors. They're going to charge that unit. They're going to head towards that spot. If another enemy unit becomes visible that's closer, they will then switch to the nearest known enemy unit that's closer. If they arrive in that location and the enemy unit is no longer there, they will look around to see if they see any more enemies, known enemies within line of sight. If they do see an enemy within line of sight, they will then charge that enemy, the nearest one. This procedure will happen over and over and over again until they finally end up in a hex with an enemy unit, or when they finish their charge, they do not see any enemy units. If they do not see any enemy units, once they've entered that location where they were charging, then they lose their berserk status. If they enter the location and there are enemy units there, then they will stay there and fight to the death to try to kill them. They will try to eliminate all the enemy units that are in that location, but they must at least kill one of them. Let's see if I've read that properly here. Kind of glossing over it here. Let's see. Okay. Here it is. I think what's actually done here. Berserk unit will lose its berserk status and return to good order whenever it eliminates all, but at least one. It has to eliminate all, but at least one. So how does that happen? There can be certain situations where it enters somebody else had killed some of the units that are in there. Let's see if your other units kill the units that are in that hex and your berserk units don't, then they would proceed back with look for the nearest unit and charge them, etc., etc. More than likely that's not going to happen, but I guess there is an exception to that. You're going to find that enemy unit, you're going to charge that location, and you're going to spend every movement point you can to move into that hex with that unit so you can start close combat with it. Of course, you can triple point blank fire on it during the advanced fire phase with half firepower. Your Berserk units will move together if they're in the same location and they have this same amount of movement points. If they fail a morale check, they are casualty reduced. They never break. So a lot of interesting things with the Berserk units, and of course you have the surrender, which is going to cause them to become broken and disrupted and surrender immediately to any adjacent known good order enemy infantry or cavalry, as if they share the same location. If no such enemy unit is adjacent, the unit is only disrupted instead. And of course, throughout this, there are lots of different exceptions that I might have or might not have covered. So please read through those rules in this section in the rulebook. This is just to give us a broad overview of the heat of battle, the rules that cover it, and give an explanation of some of the aspects of how things are done. So hopefully this was informative and you're able to get something out of it. Heat of battle and ELR are kind of opposite of one another. One is going to cause bad things to happen to your units. The heat of battle is going to have normally good things happen to your units. It's only one section of the rulebook, Section A, subsection 15, but there is a lot of information within that. Hopefully I was able to cover most of it. Again, you should use this video just as a help tutorial. Once you get a chance, you should read through these sections on your own, refer back to this video as needed, and hopefully you can understand the rules a little bit better. Well, I think that's all I've got to cover in this video. I appreciate you watching. Hopefully, for those of you that are interested, I am in the process of creating or starting the video for my after action report of the Ranger Stronghold replay on the Vassal module. So I am in the process of doing that. I had mentioned that in the beginning of this series. I wanted to get some more of these tutorial videos out. I think some people find them kind of interesting, and hopefully they're getting some things out of them. I'm also learning a great deal because I've got to study the rules really hard to make sure I understand everything before I talk about it. So through this process, I'm hoping that there isn't too many more tutorial videos I need to really cover. So I'm going to probably progress with a little bit of both the video series here and also the after action report. So hopefully you'll find that as interesting as these videos, and I do hope you can join me through that video replay of that Ranger Stronghold scenario. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts, please do post. I do try to get back with everybody that does post. If you think of a good section of the rule book that might need a little clarification through Vassal and through a video tutorial, please do post your comments, and hopefully I'll get that video out for you here, and hopefully we can get that area of the rules covered up. Well, until next time, I hope you enjoy playing ASL. This is ID Jester, signing off.